Hello friends, in this video I'm going to be going over the parts of the violin and bow. So let's start up at the top. This part of the violin is called the scroll, and I've been playing violin since I was 7, so I've always known that it's called the scroll. But it wasn't until I was doing research for this that I realized that it's scroll, like a paper scroll. Like if you roll up paper into a scroll, it looks like this. Who knew? I didn't. But yes, so this is called a scroll. Most often they look like, this with like that swirly design, but sometimes they have other designs. I've seen ones in animals' heads, people's heads, and really it can be anything. It doesn't have any like specific structural purpose. It's just, design and aesthetically pleasing, shall we say. So the scroll, this is the eye of the scroll. It's the part that faces you while you're playing. Leads into the peg box. So this is the peg box where the pegs are housed. These black things on the side are the pegs, and you can see that they go into the peg box, and that's where the strings are held. In each peg, there is a tiny hole where you put the strings and then you wind the pegs up. The pegs are used for tuning the instrument, and if you turn the peg away from you or backwards, the string is going to get higher. You're tightening the string, and if you turn the peg towards you or forwards, the string is going to get looser, so you are loosening or lowering the pitch of the string. So this is the peg box, and these are the pegs. That leads into the nut, which is this tiny little strip of wood right here. The nut basically serves as a divider between the peg box and the neck or the fingerboard, and it also has 4 grooves for each string, and it also helps the strings sit above the fingerboard at proper height. This black thing is called the fingerboard. It's where you put your fingers, and this whole part of the violin is called the neck. That's where we put our hands and what allows us to hold the violin. These are, of course, the strings. The strings can be made out of, most commonly, steel, but sometimes they can be made out of gut, sheep's gut. And we have 4 strings on the violin. The highest string is the E string. The second highest is the A string. Oh, that was D. Then the next is the D string, and then we have G string, which is the lowest. Your strings are tuned in perfect fifths. Going on, this whole thing is called the body of the violin, body. And on the body, we have what is called the upper bout, which is basically just the upper part of the violin, closer to the pegs and the scroll. This is called the waist, so very similar to the human body, right? And these little indentations here are actually very necessary because without them, the bow would be running into the side of the violin. So this part allows you to bow more freely. And this is called the lower bout, the lower part of the violin. Going on down, we have the F holes. So they are also sometimes called sound holes. That's where all of the sound comes out. And we have the bridge, which obviously holds all of the strings. And the bridge is actually not glued onto the violin in any way. The tension of the strings actually holds the bridge in place. The strings exert about 90 pounds of pressure on the bridge, which is crazy. That's a lot of pressure for this bridge to hold. And since the bridge is directly connected to the strings, it has a direct correlation with how the violin sounds, because it's in charge of basically moving the vibrations from the string into the body of the violin. And it vibrates throughout the body of the violin, and then the sound comes out through the F holes or the sound holes. They are called that because they look like cursive Fs. Over the bridge, we have this, which is the tailpiece. It's kind of like a triangular piece of wood. And on the tailpiece, you may find the fine tuners. As you can see, I only have one. The fine tuners are these little metal screws, which again are used to tune your instrument. They can change the pitch of the violin in smaller increments than the pegs. And there's basically 2 ways that the fine tuners can be attached onto the tailpiece here. So they can be like mine, where I have to have a separate device. See, this part is a separate device that my fine tuner attaches to, or the fine tuners can literally be built into the tailpiece. So there's just two different ways. Not one is better than the other. Well, I take that back. The ones that are actually built into the tailpiece disrupt the sound of the violin less. And then going down, we have the chin rest, which is where we put our chin. This is called the end pin. It's more common in like cellos or basses because their end pin actually comes out in order for them to hold their violin. But this is just basically where the tailpiece, you know, attaches onto. And yeah, so that's the end pin. This is part of the chin rest. It goes onto the back of the violin. This is obviously the back of the violin. And those are all of our parts. Let's move on to the bow. So this is called the bow, like a bow you put in your hair. This part down here is called the frog. This whole thing is called the frog. This is the screw. So this is what you turn to tighten or loosen the hair of your bow. So righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, that's how I remember it. And whenever you're getting ready to play, you want to tighten your bow hair about this much, so that a pencil could stick through. And you can see that my stick is curving downwards a bit, right? You always want the stick curving downwards a little bit. You never want it to be straight or going like that. This, like I said, is the frog, and then this is sometimes called the eye of the frog. It's just like a decorative thing that's on the frog. Then going up, we have the grip right here. You can see mine is kind of worn. This just helps whoever is playing to get a better grip on the violin, because sometimes, on the bow, because sometimes our hand gets sweaty. So this is usually made out of rubber, which helps our hand just stay in place. This is called the winding. This actually adds a little bit of weight to the bow so that the distribution of weight is a little bit more even throughout the bow. And this is called the stick, and this is called the hair. This is made out of actual horsehair, and you want to avoid touching it as much as possible because the oils from your fingers can get on the hair, and then you'll have to change it a lot more often. So avoid touching the hair whenever possible. And then finally, we have the tip of the bow, which is the top down here. I'll also touch on that this is the lower part of the bow, the part that's closer to the frog. This is the middle part of the bow, and this is the upper part of the bow. So now you know the parts of the violin and the bow. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below, and thank you for watching.